Welcome back to the final interview for the first day of Streaming Media East 2023 here in Boston, Massachusetts, lovely Boston, Massachusetts. John, you're from New Hampshire, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what's your commute like as you come in?
Today it took a really long time, but I'm still happy to be here. I'm speaking at a conference every week in May, but they're mostly really far away, so I was excited to have one that I can just drive
close
to.
By.
Yeah.
Nice. And Hub Entertainment Research,
Yep.
Is that? Okay. So tell me a little bit about Hub.
So it's 10 years old this year. I started it in 2013, and it's a consumer research company. We do about 50,000 consumer surveys a year on everything to do with how people find and choose and consume entertainment content.
Okay.
Entertainment content of all kinds, so TV, movies, music, games, but TV and video is our specialty. It's probably about 75% of our work.
Interesting. And we, of course, at Help Me Stream Research have done I guess we're in our 7th edition of the State of Streaming surveys, where we focus on asking the industry what they serve. So I very briefly caught just a little bit of your presentation there, and I want to actually see the stats off of it. But we've noticed a slowdown in fast TV, not just in fast TV, but in interest in deploying fast TV, which is fascinating because the general consensus that you hear is, oh, we all need to go to fast because customers can tolerate advertising and like that. You were talking about sort of tolerance levels around advertising. Can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, so we have one study in particular that we do twice a year that just focuses completely on ad-supported content and what's the role of ad-supported TV in the streaming TV world. And the basis for that is that I think Netflix, at least as of maybe several years ago, had sort of convinced people or that they hadn't done it, but their success had convinced people that the era of having ads in TV shows was over, and people would never tolerate ads in a TV show again unless they absolutely had to. And in reality, that's not that's never really been the case, but it's especially not the case now as connected TV interfaces and as streaming TV supported by ads makes the experience a lot different from what people are used to when you think about the old days of linear TV. So the ad loads are smaller. Oftentimes the ads are targeted to you, which is actually something that people welcome. And some of the ad-supported platforms have content on them that you can't see anywhere else, and people really want to see it. So we've found that the largest segment of consumers are willing to, or even prefer ad-supported platforms if they need to use them to watch a particular show that they want to see, and they're even more tolerant if by using an ad-supported platform they can save some money. So we're seeing that part of the equation get more important as folks are getting squeezed a little bit by inflation.
So on the serving side of it, we see sort of a flat line of subscriptions without ads. That's sort of stayed constant for the last 3.5 years we've done this. But subscriptions with ads as a revenue, as a portion of revenue, has dropped off considerably. Is that because what's being made on ads is less for the content distributor, or is it because people are moving back towards subscriptions without ads or toward fast, where they're not paying for it?
We're seeing the thing that consumers find, or at least the appeal has grown the most, are the platforms that give you a choice of watching, paying a little bit more and not seeing ads, or saving a little bit of money and there's ads in your shows.
Okay.
So about a third of people say they prefer platforms that give you that choice. When we look at satisfaction and when we look at likelihood to churn, there's almost no difference in either of those between people that are using the ad-supported or ad-free version of the same platform. Okay. And I think the reason for that is it just kind of goes in with everything else about TV, which is people have, if nothing else, they've been conditioned to think that I don't ever have to compromise ever again because there's so much content, there's so many platforms out there.
Okay.
And the problem, I think, when there was no, when HBO Max was only ad-free, for instance, if you were somebody that would be happy to watch ads and wanted to save some money, you didn't have that choice.
Okay.
Or there's a platform that's only ad supported. If you're someone who really can't tolerate them and you'd
Right.
rather pay and not see them, you don't have that choice. So giving people the choice means no one has to compromise. We have seen the number of people who say they use at least one FAST everything else has dropped over the last year. FAST has grown significantly, and then it was the same this year as last year, so about 58, 60% of people. I think one thing that might make it less attractive if you're a provider is that there are so many FASTs out there now that trying to have yours sort of break through the clutter can be difficult.
And to make a pun, if you weren't fast to the market in the early days on it, you're just like everybody else.
Yeah, or you have to have, I think you have to have something that isn't just as easily found elsewhere. So some of the really niche fasts, I think, have a good shot at being, they're not going to be huge, but they can be successful for what they are because they're offering things that there's not an easy analog to find out somewhere else.
Sure.
But if you're sort of a middle of the road and you're offering, I don't know, scripted dramas and you have cool originals, but so does every other platform, it might be a little bit of a haul to get folks to try yours when there's other ones that, at least on the face of them, look exactly the same to consumers that are inundated with these things and the marketing for these things and don't have a great ability to sort of tell them apart.
One of the other things you talked about that I saw was, of course, the number of SVODs or SVODs with ads that people watch or subscribe to, sorry. Has that number stayed constant over the last couple of years, or is it dropping?
It went up every year from 2013 through 2022. In 2023, it went from 7.5 TV sources. That's not just SVOD subscriptions, but all sources, back down to 6.4.
Okay.
Which is a pretty big drop, but it's still the second highest number that we've ever seen since we started the company. So we're not at the 52-week high anymore, but we're about at like a 50-week high.
Okay, interesting. So that'll be a trend to sort of watch. And you say you do these twice a year?
We do them about 10 times a year.
10 times a year.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we start seeing that moving down slightly over the course of, it's been quite intriguing to see the price rises, which are consistent on SVOD across the different platforms, at a time when the economy is perhaps not doing as best it can, and whether it's just an anomaly to see it drop for a brief period of time. I almost wonder if we're going to get to an M&A situation here pretty quickly, where you've got this model where everybody's had their own exclusive content, and they've used that to keep people on the platforms for the period of time as the content's being released. And I'm thinking about something like, show I love, the Mrs. Maisel show.
Love that show.
It's coming to an end. They did the episodic thing where they drug it out, over time. But it's good enough, and with the producing team behind it, that I could see that going into syndication on some other platform.
Yeah. And we're seeing that with HBO Max. Is going to take some of their really high, like Westworld. They're going to be licensing that out to like fast platforms.
Okay. So you won't have to necessarily just be on a platform to see that content. The possibility is after it's been out for a period of time.
Absolutely. I mean, all these companies need to make that content budget they have. They need to stretch it because it's getting more constricted now.
Sure. In
2020, like 60% of the top SVOD shows were released all episodes at once. 2022, 65%, I think I had in my presentation, are released once a week. And the reason for that is economics. You take that same show, if everybody hoovers up all 8 episodes in a week and then they're looking for the next thing, if you can string that out over a longer period of time, you're getting more mileage. But the funny thing is that consumers actually don't really mind. They want to. People still want to binge view sometimes, but luckily there's still a lot of catalog shows that they can binge view, and people are kind of rediscovering the fun of anticipating, Sunday night when The Last of Us comes out.
The water cooler effect
and then,
for the next day.
Even more so, there's one night a week now that I don't have to do that kind of Netflix scroll of death and take 20 minutes to figure out what I'm going to watch for the next hour.
Although I've had to explain to my kids who are younger than, they're not teenagers yet, why we have to wait once a week for the Book of Fett or the Mandalorian, because we're like, yeah, this is what happened in the old days. And they're like, why? We want to watch the next episode now. And I'm like, they're dragging the subscription. I mean, I can't explain that part to them, but ultimately, I think it'll be interesting with the up-and-coming generation who sort of came into it with binge watching to now be forced to go back to
I think it's going to work. It's supply and demand, and they're creating scarcity.
True.
And I think that's going to make
it's the same
people will say they don't like it,
Yeah.
and sort of they won't, but they're still going to watch it. And I bet you it'll be more of a kind of a cultural phenomenon that we used to see all the time with TV shows. It's going to start to bring that back again, I think.
I think there also might be a model that says let's release it at a particular time on a day as well. So while we won't call it prime time, let's say, I'm Disney or one of the big companies, and I realize I'm going to release this episode. Maybe I'm going to release it at an on-peak time. But maybe I'm going to release it in a semi-non-peak time that happens to hit closer to prime time. Because then it becomes an experience everybody can have at one time versus having to watch it at midnight.
That exact thing is happening. That same Nielsen data I quoted in my presentation, there was another stat that shows the day of the week that the new episodes are dropped, and as more series have gone to that episodic release, there's also a lot more distribution, like where in the week they get dropped for the exact reason you said, I think. Yeah,
so it's almost like we're going back to the water cooler effect. I watch this on Thursday night at 8 p.m. and then I can go talk about it tomorrow.
And I think, there's people that are not going to, it's going to be jarring from what they're used to, but I think that there's no way around it, kind of that acquires subscribers at any cost, no matter how much we have to spend on new shows and how many we have to make, it was never really sustainable.
It wasn't, and I think Reinhard put it well this morning in his keynote. We're course correcting. We're going to go a little too far at this point with that, but at some point we'll come back, and all that content will be licensable out. And so you'll
think about all the awesome shows that kind of never really got the attention they should have, and now they're just in the can waiting to get applied somewhere where they're going to be appreciated.
And then I guess one final question on this, I think back to shows like Longmire, which was on TV, it dropped below the sort of level of TV, but the fans sort of made the convincing argument that we'd watch it on an SVOD if it was on one of those platforms, and of course it was, and did well, and now there's a larger package to go back out and re-syndicate. Do you think we'll have that sort of back and forth model too? If it falls off in popularity on broadcast TV or cable, it'll move over to the...
Yeah, I mean, Longmire is a good example because it wasn't so much the popularity as the fact that the people it was popular with were old, and not in the sweet spot for TV advertising. But then, if you're a streaming platform with that ads, you don't care how old they are, because you just want to make sure that you give them enough stuff that there's that incremental increase in reasons for you to keep pulling out your credit card. Every month.
Exactly. Once a month.
So I think for sure. I mean, look at Netflix. The most popular show for a while was Friends, and then and after that it was The Office, and there weren't any new episodes of those. And most of the people that were watching it weren't alive the last time there was an ad campaign promoting those shows. But it's just a good show, and there's a lot of it. So that
I watched an episode on the flight up here, and I cringed like I used to cringe. In it feeling bad, of The Office. There was one scene they were doing this Moroccan Christmas thing, and Michael looks at Kelly and he's like, was it like this every day in India when you left India? And you just see the blank stares, because they did such a great job with the blank stares, and then you're like,
that wasn't even that long ago, and there's definitely some stuff they had that you would not get away with today. But to your point, I think for sure that there's going to be so many. Remember that Netflix got its start with way before they had originals. The stuff that they licensed was the stuff that the TV networks thought nobody would ever want to watch. So their entire library was the blue bucket at Walmart with the $5.99 DVDs in it. But they took that and they put it together and they arranged it in sufficient volume and in such a way that somebody could sift through it and find a thing they'd never heard of, but that they were going to like it. And that's what that whole business is built on. So we're back where there's tremendous opportunity for that there's so much stuff out there now.
Fair point.
that's been built in the last few years. Waiting for someone to
We
watch
could
it.
go on for probably another 20 minutes, but I
Yeah.
think I need to wrap it up here. So
Sounds good.
thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
time, and we'll be back tomorrow with our next interview.